Chapter 261 is going to be the most infamous chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen and the most controversial by far, in my opinion. After last week's tease of the return of Gojo, we have some shocking reveals this week that have already split the fandom, and I think Gege's decisions in this chapter are either going to make or break this story. I truly think that when the story of Jujutsu Kaisen is over, that this moment is going to make or break the story. It's either going to be a moment that people look back on and think is absolutely amazing, or where the story just ends up being cooked. So in today's video, we're going to discuss chapter 261 and this shocking reveal. So let's get right into it. Chapter 260 ended with Sukuna being shocked at seeing Gojo in the smoke. 261 begins with Yuji crushing Sukuna's heart as he's remembering Choso, which is giving him strength. However, Sukuna easily tosses Yuji aside when he notices Gojo. Gojo slowly lifts his head, revealing stitches across his forehead. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw this without reading it, I totally thought it was Kenjaku. That was kind of one of my theories I had, although a lot of people really don't like this theory for valid reasons. You know, Kenjaku's definitely dead at this point. But I thought it was Kenjaku, although we learn that Gojo is Yuta right now. Yuta used Kenjaku's body swapping technique to switch bodies, and we'll talk completely about this towards the end. But what an insane reveal. This is just absolutely crazy. I still can't even wrap my head around what is happening here. But Sukuna addresses Gojo as Yuta, and he praises him, and he says he doesn't realize that Yuta had it in him to go so far to win. This is truly an insane reveal, and again, we'll talk about it more as we go on. But what length Yuta had to go to switch bodies into his old master to fight Sukuna. That's how big of a threat he is, and Sukuna is definitely impressed and probably a little scared of this right now. A flashback then occurs where Maki rejects Yuta's plan to take over Gojo's body. It's got to be pretty awkward if you're Yuta's girlfriend if he's planning to take over somebody else's body. Hikari mentions that this should be a last-ditch effort to defeat Sukuna, so all of their other options have been expended. Then Yuta will go and take over Gojo's body. They had Rika consume Kenjaku and inherit his curse technique so he can body swap. Rika can only remain fully manifested for 5 minutes, making it unclear what will happen to Yuta after this 5 minutes is up. Kusakabe brings up how the plan isn't really humane, and that's kind of based in my opinion. This does not seem humane at all. We all love Gojo, and we don't want to see his body, taken over, desecrated, but it is Yuta, and he did have permission from Gojo, as we'll talk about in a little bit here. Yuta says they have to ditch their humanity since they're fighting the strongest sorcerer in history, so anything must be done in order for them to win. Yuta says if we can throw away our humanity, we should do it without hesitation. I think this is really powerful, and it starts to set up this little plot point that we have with Yuta and Gojo, kind of being the strongest characters, at least on the sorcerer side. Nobody really understands Gojo, and we kind of see Yuta here sympathizes with Gojo, and he actually cares about him, and he doesn't just think of him as, this strong sorcerer who kind of brings balance. He thinks of him as a person. Yuta defends Gojo, saying he had to become a monster that everyone relied on. He was truly alone, and a lot of people only admired his power and the stability he brought to the world. Gojo says that he does not intend to lose the battle, and that Yuta could use his corpse if he ended up dying, but this shows Gojo was extremely confident going into this fight, and he did not expect to lose. So this pretty much confirms Gojo's dead. There's no way he's coming back after this. He's definitely dead. And yeah, it's just kind of sad to see that he had the confidence in himself to win this fight and just ultimately could not put it together. I mean, Sukuna is just extremely broken, as we know. And it was kind of a 3v1. I mean, he had Maharaga and the other beast. I forget what it was called. But, yeah, Gojo was outmatched, and he gave a hell of a fight. It just sucks that now he is definitely gone. Another interesting part of this conversation between Yuta and Gojo is how Gojo starts to explain that him and Yuta are actually distant relatives. We kind of knew about this before, but Gojo explains it in further detail, explaining that the Sugawara family is how they are connected. Somehow they have ancestors that are connected there, and Gojo explains how Yuta has been set up to be even more powerful than Gojo himself. He just has a better situation, and I mean, we know Yuta is basically the second strongest sorcerer after Gojo, and now he inherits his body. He is really being set up to be the next guy, and I really hope he can pull this off. But I mean, so many things can go wrong for Yuta here. We then get confirmation that Gojo was the person to kill the higher ups. It was kind of up in the air who had actually killed these guys, but we kind of thought it was Yuta at some point. Now we know it's Gojo, and it seems like Maki, Panda, Inumaki, and Yuta were all kind of following Gojo before he did this. And Yuta again says that Gojo does not have to be a monster on his own, and that he has people around him who can help him. And it seems like Gojo does not want to do this. It's not a glamorous thing to do, but he has to do these things sometimes, just being such a powerful force that he is. We then return to the current time where Amai, who is Yuji's friend from the Culling Games, and Nida, who is with Todo in Shibuya helping heal people, are shown as a part of Shoko's medical crew. And we see Yuta after Wee Wee saved him and Sukuna slashed him. He's been completely severed in half. So people were saying this when that chapter came out, and I kind of didn't believe it. I thought it was just a weird angle. But no, it turns out Yuta was completely cut in half. He's still conscious somehow, but it's due to Rika. And Shoko, we learn, had stitched Gojo's corpse back together, kind of in this plan to get Yuta into Gojo's corpse. So she had already, stitched him back up. He's dead at this point. It sucks, but, she still stitched him back up so Yuta could get into the body and fill it with RCT once he got into Gojo's body to completely heal it. We then cut back to the battlefield where we see Yuta as Gojo using Infinite Void and Sukuna opening his Malevolent Shrine. We're about to see another domain clash again, and this is just a weird development. I mean, we're going to see Gojo and Sukuna basically round two, although, Yuta's going to have some new techniques and hopefully some new strategies against Sukuna, but it does feel like this kind of takes away from the original fight. I mean, it's a huge development, and obviously it'll make some sense with the story coming together. But it does feel like this is kind of just a round two, although everyone knows this is not actually Gojo, which, again, it sucks, but in my mind, it takes away a little bit from that original fight. So I hope there is some new aspect to the fight here, whether it's Yuta having a new domain or Yuta using more copied techniques and not just using Gojo's techniques. I have no idea how I feel about the development of the story. On one hand, I wanted Gojo to return as himself, and on the other, I think that he had a really impactful death and does not need to return at all. With the reveal that Yuta has inherited the corpse, I feel like it's extremely bold by Gege, and only time will tell if this ends up being, a pivotal moment in the story that people really like or people hate. And the fandom's already been split, kind of like I said earlier. Some people are fine with this, some people hate it. Again, I really don't know how I feel about this yet. I do feel like this diminishes a little bit what we were getting with Yuji. He was kind of destroying Sukuna at this point, and Todo had just shown up by his side, and it felt like they could have gotten it done against Sukuna. That's just how I feel. But now we're going to get Gojo versus Sukuna round two, probably with Yuji and Todo involved somehow. And, this is going to be a really interesting fight. We've never seen these three characters fight together, and technically it's not Gojo, but we still haven't seen Yuta and Todo fight together. So either way, we're going to get a really interesting fight. I think narratively, having Yuta try to take some of the burden away from Gojo by going to such an extreme length to become a powerful sorcerer is just a really interesting point. This is probably my favorite part of this chapter, is how Yuji and Yuta seemingly were two of the main people who really cared about Gojo as a person, and Yuta literally being in his body might help Yuta understand Gojo's position more. He is also the second strongest sorcerer, and right now, he probably does feel fairly alone when it comes to fighting Sukuna. He does not have many allies left. Most of the strong sorcerers we have to fight Sukuna are dead or out of action. It's not looking good for anyone. Yuji's been putting the team on his back for the past few chapters. It's great to have Todo back, but now we have Yuta carrying that burden and just doing something absolutely eerie and feels so wrong, going into his sensei's body to become so powerful to fight back. It is a crazy narrative shift, and it's going to take time for at least me to kind of accept this and, start to see how this is going to help the story. And I think narratively, though, it does work. It shows that Yuta is just turning into a monster himself, kind of like Gojo was. I mean, if you think about it, he got cut in half and willingly transferred his brain into another body so he could continue fighting for his friends. It's truly a crazy twist, and the reaction from the fans has been justified, I think, for sure. So I think a topic I'm going to want to discuss in a future video is how Gojo criticized Geto earlier for being controlled by Kenjaku, although the same exact thing is happening to Gojo now, only it's Yuta controlling him. That's just some insane foreshadowing. I don't know if that was intended, but definitely something I want to analyze in the future, so let me know if you guys want to hear about that. But after these 5 minutes are up, it's going to be extremely interesting to see what happens to Gojo's body. Will Yuta die, or will he continue living on in Gojo's body full time? I really hope that's not the case, but it could be. Either way, we are about to witness one of the most interesting fights of the series, and I really hope that this does not take the spotlight away from Yuji, but that remains to be seen. This chapter just blew my mind. I'm still kind of processing all that happened in this chapter, as I'm sure everyone else who read this is. But if you guys enjoyed, let me know down below. I'm going to cover that Geto Gojo comparison, I think, in my next video. And I think we have a break next week, so let the speculation run rampant, and we'll see what happens. But what an insane time for JJK fans. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.